Hello, everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I want to welcome you to another episode of this fascinating video series. You've heard us a couple of times make reference to what we call the prototype Quran. Well, today we are going now to begin to address what is meant by the prototype. Of course, with me here in studios, no other than Dr. Jay Smith. Brother, welcome back as always. Tell us a little bit more about the prototype Quran, and you've whetted our appetite when you began to give some backgrounds concerning some possible Christian sources as well.
Okay, so we talked about in one of our episodes this guy named Umar, and we talked about the fact that this fellow priest named Gabriel is the one that gave him what we now know today is the Diatessaron, and that either his relationship with Gabriel or because of the text he was reading that was given, he then went from his strident Judaism and he became a Christian, so that by 647 he even coined a coin with possibly his image holding a cross on it, and he has the word Muhammad, the praised one, referring to possibly Jesus Christ. Now, what are we finding? Well, this was the German school who has been really unpacking this, and one of the things I want to do today is I want to introduce these two books right here. This book here is called A Challenge to Islam for Reformation, which is a terrible title, actually, to tell you the truth. But it's the other text that's underneath that's actually what it's all about. Let me just read it. It says, the rediscovery and reliable reconstruction of a comprehensive pre-Islamic Christian hymnal hidden in the Quran under earliest Islamic reinterpretations.
So it's a book about the Quran, really. I mean, the big title make you think like you're talking about reforming Islam. You're talking about the Quran here. And I encourage everybody to get this book. It's an amazing book.
Yeah, because who is it that authored this book? This was created in 1970 by a man named Dr. Gunther Lulling. Dr. Gunther Lulling was a German scholar who wrote a PhD thesis, and this is his PhD thesis. Now, it was written in German. You can see it's a pretty long thesis. What did he do? Well, he was the first to actually ask the question we've been asking: where is that Proto-Quran? Where is that Ur-Quran? Where is the archetype that Van Putten talks about in our first episode? He was asking that question in 1970s. We're talking about 50 years ago. And he wrote this thesis. This thesis was awarded the Opus Eximium. Opus Eximium. Opus Eximium is the highest you can get for any thesis there in Germany. If you get Opus Eximium, you are automatically given a professorship in the institution.
To teach.
Yep. You're given a professorship. He was not given a professorship.
Why is that?
Well, in 1972, 2 years later, he was thrown out of the university.
Wow.
No one told him why. They would not explain it to him. I went to see him in 98 or 99. I went to Germany. I went with a colleague of mine. We went to actually see Dr. Gerrit Puyn. Dr. Gerrit Puyn wanted to introduce me to him. So we went and we had lunch with him, and I met he and his wife. And what I had been told is that he was thrown into obscurity because of this thesis. This is in 1972.
Is it that much dangerous?
He was thrown into obscurity, and for 30 years he was on welfare. No chance of getting into any university system, no chance of being a professor. In 1999, when I met him, we said, well, could we see this thesis? And so he showed it to us. It's all in German, and I don't speak German. I said, well, can we get this translated into English? He said, well, I've already translated it to English. I said, well, give it to us. We would like to then rework it so that it's readable, because when I started reading it, he had one sentence 400 words long, as Germans tend to do. 400 words. By the time you get to the end of the sentence, I couldn't even remember what we started out with. So we took it back. He said, give it back, and we took it back to London, and we pared it down using German speakers who understood still academic material, but they understood how to bring it down to so people like you and me can read it. And then we gave it back to him, and he sent it, and he wanted to get it published. He got it published in India. So this is published in India. That's the only place that would publish it. You can see this is by Motilal Banarsidass Publishers in Delhi. They published it for him. Get this book, because you're not going to find many copies left anymore. I'm saying every one of you grab this book. You can still get it on Amazon.com. There's still a few copies left before this becomes a treasure trove. Because what he did was very simple. He said, if we cannot understand a lot of the meaning of the Quran, there's about 25% of the Quran you can't even understand. But he was more not interested in that. He was more interested in what did and where did this Quran come from? Because it didn't just come out ex nihilo, out of somewhere. And he also said a lot of this stuff looked like it's borrowed. In fact, he started looking at the poetry, the beautiful poetry that Muslims say, how could a man who can't even write such beautiful poetry? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, that's true. I've seen that poetry before. Now, see, he was a Syriac scholar. And so what he did is he decided to take off the dots. Remember we talked about the dots?
Right. So he went backward, basically, took the dots off.
He took the dots and he took the vowels off. He took the dhamma, the kasra, and the fatha, and the harakats.
Right.
The dots, the 2 dots, 3 dots, 1 dot, and 2 dots below. So he took them all off and just went back to the
rasm, the structure.
rasm.
Yeah, and he called it the 3 layers. So he eliminated layer 2 and 3 and went down to layer 1.
And guess what he found?
He began to find hymnal.
Christian hymns written in Syriac by Christians in their churches for worship in the 5th and 6th century, almost strophe for strophe, line for line, exactly like those Christian hymns, all written in Syriac. Can you see why this is so controversial? Can you see why
Especially
this
back
is so
then,
damaging?
of course, yeah.
Absolutely. In Germany, they would not stand for this, and they threw him out, completely threw him out. Now, because of what we did, Thomas was telling me when a number of months ago, when I was Thomas Alexander, who I have as part of the Sin Sifters. He is one of the group. He's the German representative for the Inada group. He was saying because of this English translation that we had translated in the late 1990s, in the early 2000s, this was now, I think, 2007, this was finally published in English. He said that has resurrected him. That resurrected him in the academic world. So by 2014, when he finally died, he has now been resurrected because of this English translation, because this is what people needed to hear. They needed to know. Now, he is not the only one that has done this. Because of what he did in the 1970s, Christoph Luxemburg then came and did this in 2000. This takes it one step further. He decided, well, why haven't we done this in academia? Let's find out where the dark passages are. Because the dark passages, you know well, when you grew up, the Muslim scholars, about 25% of the Quran just makes no sense, even to the Muslim scholars.
Yeah, it's about 1/3, give or take.
About 1/3.
Yeah.
And there are these letters before each one of the surahs. No one knows what those letters are
The
for.
mysterious letters, for
It's a
instance.
mysterious letter. We're going to talk about that later on. So he wanted to go through and do that. This book came out in 2000. This has caused an enormous earthquake.
Oh, I remember. I mean,
scholastic
everybody went
circles.
after him.
They all went after him. In fact, his name is not Christoph Luxemburg. That's a pseudonym. He had to use a pseudonym. He is from Germany, and he had to use a pseudonym because there are so many people that he got death threats. And this is what happens when you do something that is controversial in Islam.
Do you know him?
I have never met him.
Yeah.
I do not know him. I don't even have a picture of him.
Right.
But do you know him?
I know of someone who is connected with him for sure, and he's definitely an amazing scholar for sure.
Now, because of what these two men have done, Gabriel Sama came out with this book, and I would encourage everybody to get it. In 2006, Gabriel Sama, who is a Syriac scholar, he is a Syriac native speaker. This is his language. He understands it. And basically what he is saying is, we've been trying to tell you this for years. You people in the West, have you not been listening to us? If you look at the Quran, where do you think it came from?
That's a very interesting point you bring up. Why is it that the scholars in the West just somehow discount the people in the East who are so close to the action?
Because of what the people in the East have been trying to tell us. The Syriac scholars have been saying, folks, you don't want to listen to us. Really, the Quran, if you really want to know what the Quran is, you need to go back to the Quran. You need to go back to the archetype. You need to go back to the proto-Quran.
Exactly.
And who do you think knows it better than anybody? Well, why don't you ask us who know the language?
Right.
We are the Aramaic speakers. We are the Syriac speakers. We are Syriac Aramaic. That is what this is called. The Syriac or Aramaic precedents, antecedents to the Quran. So I would encourage every one of you to get Gabriel Sama's book, because this is just, listen, this has been out since 2007. We're just finally getting our hands on it and finally telling the whole world. Find out what he is saying. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to go in the next segment and we're going to show you. In fact, what I'm going to do, instead of doing Gabriel Sama, I'm going to show you what Christoph Luxemburg, how he came and what he did. In the next segment, let's look through, because he did 7 different things.
Before we
to
even
get to his
there,
conclusions.
we want to address the academic attack.
Okay, let's do that first.
Yeah,
let's do that first.
Let's talk about that, because we want to show, after the academic attack, what is it that they were attacking in the first place, and does his method make sense?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, everyone, you've heard basically what's coming up next. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to meeting you again next time. This is Al Fadi. God bless.